Please be aware that this review contains minor spoilers in terms of the foes you face, as well as certain early scripted events. With that said, Resident Evil, the classic series that was revolutionizing gaming before I was out of kindergarten, has returned. If you are unfamiliar with the first game, then allow me to paint a scene. A mansion in the middle of the woods, its various wings, rooms, and corridors holding snippets of the main story hidden in the environment as diary extracts. Cutscenes are rare. Puzzles require the player to explore. Puzzles have to be solved to progress. Puzzles that direct the player on a game of hide and seek around this expansive mansion and its outside grounds. While you do this, a bizarre collection of hungry zombies, angry and hungry zombies, mutated lab creations, sharks, spiders and other foul beasties attempt to make you their breakfast, brunch, lunch, dinner and supper. All the while, resources are scarce, and often you have to choose between shooting the thing trying to eat you now and not having the ammo to properly f*** up the bigger thing that surely will be hiding behind the next corner. Yet despite the many horrors that lie in wait around the mansion, the biggest enemy is the mansion itself. The low, droning music that keeps you on edge, the slow animation of each door as you open them, and the corresponding creak of the hinges. The camera angles that watch as you run around, probably hopelessly lost, and that creeping dread that the empty book you picked up 3 hours ago, that looked important at the time, actually was a red herring and has no purpose at all. That, ladies and gentlemen, was the first Resident Evil. The core essence of that original game has been distilled in aged oak caskets for years and served in a modern decanter, a fine, fine drink that burns as it goes down, but leaves you feeling very satisfied indeed. By now, you might have guessed that I rather like the new Resident Evil, and you would be right, you clever, clever bunny you. But in all seriousness, what makes this game so damn good? Firstly, the atmosphere. In-game, dark corridors contrast with the warmly lit and softly furnished safe rooms. With this contrast, clear lines of safety are drawn between the areas where you explore and are certain to face danger, and the closet-like safe rooms where you can take a deep breath, rearrange your inventory, craft some necessities, and save your progress. Then, there are the indeterminate areas where you are probably safe from attack, but lack the comfort of the safe rooms, such as the kitchen. In this type of area, despite the lack of actual threat, the dark corners, creaks, groans, and other ambient noises serve to you a feeling of deep unease. These areas can easily be compared to the main hall of the first game's mansion, where, despite the lack of danger, atmosphere was very much present to keep you on edge. The biggest player in building this atmosphere is the game's background audio. This is a game that deserves to be played with a good pair of headphones in a darkened room, as with this setup you will be looking up at the battered ceiling as creaks sound from the floor above. Peer outside a nearby window as a storm rages, and sometimes just stand and listen to make sure that you're not in danger. This background audio is highlighted by the insane family that you spend much of your time avoiding or fending off. Their cackles and jeers are the cues for you to either find a new hiding place if they're getting too close, or panic and start shooting.
Who are all you people? Where's Mia?
The fact that you can actually fight and defend yourself reasonably well might be a shock if you were expecting this game to be in the same vein as recent indie horror releases such as the Outlast and Amnesia series. Whilst it does take many cues from their successors, such as the first-person camera, it also remains aware of its history, and refrains from making the player completely defenseless as Outlast and Amnesia were wont to do. Resident Evil has always been about actively fighting the horrors that you face, compounded with resource and inventory management. This agency makes this title feel distinct from recent horror releases such as Outlast and Amnesia. So, how does it actually feel to fight for your life and move around? Pretty good actually. It's fairly standard FPS fare. You aim down the sights and shoot at the scary thing. You can sprint, which I will say is quite slow to a notable degree, but given the normally slow movement speed of the enemies, coupled with the normally limited space of the environment, the slow sprint is fairly understandable from a design perspective. It simply wouldn't make sense to have the player be able to dodge nasties with ease. This is still a horror title after all. And that is about it, really. It's a very standard system. One thing which I think could have been implemented would have been a lean mechanic, where by pressing a key or a button, you're able to lean slightly to peek around a corner and check for danger. This is a classic in horror titles, as, naturally, you want to avoid danger where you can. I feel like it would only have added to the player's feeling of control and character manipulation, but at the same time it's only a slight pet peeve, and really just a personal preference, as ever since playing the first Fear, I have adored leaning as a mechanic in any FPS game. Regardless, movement and fighting feels good, and far more fluid than any Resident Evil title to date has been, which is actually saying something given the highly refined third-person combat system used in Resident Evil 6. So, what else is worth mentioning about Resident Evil 7, other than the atmosphere and general player control? Well, the game does contain a crafting system, similar to every previous title. It's very simple. You have herbs and other crafting components that when combined can make different things. So, as mentioned, herbs do make their appearance once again. A series classic, and this time they can be combined with chemical fluid to make a more effective healing item. Another basic item that can be used is gunpowder, which, as you might expect, can be used to craft more ammo. Varying strengths of the crafting items can make stronger end results. This, coupled with limited inventory space, is yet another Resident Evil staple, and means that often you will need to choose between backpedaling to a safe room to dump some rubbish from your inventory into a chest, or saving time and destroying an item in order to make room for that vital puzzle piece that you require in order to proceed. This tricky situation can be bypassed with well thought out inventory management, but if you choose to play in the harder difficulty, you will need to take extra care, as in order to save your progress, you will need to keep handy cassette tapes, another nod to the primogenitor of the series, wherein you needed to ink rolls in order to save your game. Despite the many nods to and mechanics borrowed from the first Resident Evil, this game has improved in many obvious areas, for example, the graphics and basic combat systems. A huge improvement, however, on the first game that this title makes is the pacing. In the original game, story exposition was sparingly given to the player, and often would only make sense once you had progressed to a certain point in the game. This left the player often solving puzzle after puzzle, desperate for another snippet of info regarding what on earth was going on in that damn mansion. Whilst this new Resident Evil still does that to a large degree, the fact is that you confront the main antagonists fairly often. This is a huge deal, as it enforces the feel that the player is making meaningful progression through the story. This is starkly different to the first Resident Evil, where the large gaps between meaningful encounters that weren't just another standard zombie often left you desperate for something important to happen. In Resident Evil 7, the many chases and fights with the main antagonists, the family, means that you rarely stop to consider how long it's going to be before something genuinely important happens. A huge step forward in my books. To wrap up then, who would I recommend this to? If you are a die-hard Resident Evil fan who somehow has yet to buy this out of possibly doubt in the new direction, let me put you at ease. This is classic Resident Evil. The subtle atmosphere and horror of the first game has been successfully fused with a modern combat system, and it feels great. And the story, from what I've experienced, is pretty awesome as well. If you are a fan of recent horror releases and crave some more thrills, then this will again serve you well. Unlike the more action-focused Resident Evils of the past 10 years, wow, has it really been that long? This is a genuinely scary game, with the tension that previous titles in the series have completely lacked. The incorporation of a legit combat system should also make for a different experience to recent horror releases. I would not recommend this title, however, if you hate puzzle solving. Whilst the puzzles in this game aren't completely mind-bending, they are a firm nod to the glorious puzzle-solving adventure games of the distant past, in much the same way that the first game was. All in all, I personally adore the style they've hit. It takes what existed in the first game and transplants what still works today into a modern shell. Who would have thought it? Puzzles, a haunted house, and some scary dudes. It's still a winning formula, 20 years on. As always, thanks for watching.